Money, which is the podcast that talks about investing and personal finance for Muslims. Now, on today's episode, we are going to be talking about is investing in stocks and shares halal? This is like a common question that used to be around a lot before. I think it's been kind of dealt with now recently. But yeah, I definitely want to kind of start from beginnings and trying to keep things as simple as possible. And for those that are new here, so on this podcast or show, we like to keep things simple and give investment information and personal finance for Muslims and kind of just get Muslims talking about money. I'm also like really keen to connect with people. So if you do want to connect, please leave a comment and I will get back to you. I'd also like to put a disclaimer out there that this is not financial advice. I'm not allowed to give financial advice. This is just sharing my experience just for information and entertainment purposes. Now, the first thing I would say is that many people think that stocks and shares is like gambling, and that is not the case at all. I think you have to kind of understand a bit more what stocks and shares are. And essentially, what a stock is just a company. So, a company that you can buy shares in. So, for example, a stock could be Amazon, and you can then buy shares in Amazon. So, the more shares you have, then it means the more that you own of that company. So where it's kind of different from gambling is that, with gambling, people gamble on, in the casino, they put their money down and then like a certain event happens. So for example, then I play some blackjack or whatever they play in the casino. If they lose, they've lost the money. If they've won the money. And that's it. That kind of transaction is almost sort of done. Whereas when you're buying a stocks or shares, it's a bit like, like a shop, you buy a shop, you invest in that shop, you buy stock, you buy some bottles of Coca-Cola or some vegetables and you sell it and then you make some money, then you can come put that money back into the business and then buy more stock and keep selling it. So, it's a bit like that, a bit like kind of having a shop or, when you buy Amazon, like the share price can go down, but it can also go back up again. So it's not just like a one-off sort of transaction. And, it's people do think it's like haram, but there is lots of advice out there and scholarly opinions that saying it is fine. Now the issue is when you talk about investing in a gambling company or alcohol company or company like that, and it's very clear that we cannot invest in those sort of companies, as a Muslim, because they are quite fundamentally doing things that we don't believe in, such as gambling and alcohol and things like that. So we have to kind of definitely stay away from those companies. However, there are companies like, for example, a supermarket stock. So in the UK, we have Tesco or Sainsbury's or Asda, one of these sort of companies. So can we invest in these companies? So they do a lot of halal stuff. Selling fruit and veg. A lot of them sell halal meat now, cleaning products, things like that. But they also have like products that are not haram, like that are not halal, like alcohol and things like that. So can we invest in those sort of companies? So the thing is, this is where it kind of gets quite technical, and like all of these stocks. So stock, remember, is like a company or something that you can invest in, needs to be screened, and they look at things like how much non-halal things does it deal with. I think they said it needs to be about 5% or something, how much debt it has as well. So if a company's got a lot of debt, that it's paying a lot of interest. So we want to kind of avoid investing in those sort of companies. And I've kind of looked into this before, and it did feel a bit sort of complicated. And I like to keep things simple. And so there is a simple way in terms of investing, and that is by investing in a fund. Now, a fund is something that is run by someone or run by a company, and there are these Islamic funds out there that are run by Islamic fund manager, but also they have a board of scholars that kind of advise and tell them what stocks they can that should be invested in, not invested in. And it makes it very simple. And that's exactly what I do. I just invest in an index fund. Now, an index fund is something I've spoken about before, and I'll be speaking about more. Is you know from what I've read, the best sort of fund you can kind of invest in is what Warren Buffett recommends and things like that. So again, this is not financial advice, but just what I'm sharing what I've done. And the other thing about stock screening, so whether to know if a stock is halal or not, is that you have to do this regularly. You can't just look at a stock and then like say Tesco, as I was talking about before, the supermarket stock, and say, okay, yep, that looks fine. invest your money in it and then leave it and forget about it. No, it needs to be checked consistently to make sure that it is still halal and everything is, in order. Because potentially a company that was, halal and then suddenly they take out massive debt and then no longer become halal. So, that company, all the shares need to be sold out in that company, and then the money needs to be kind of invested in something else. So yeah, it can be. So investing in stocks and shares, from what I've read and everything about there, is quite clear. It is halal, but the key thing is you need to kind of invest in halal companies that do adhere to these sort of halal principles, which can be quite difficult to determine. There are apps and things that help you, but the easiest way to do that is just to invest in a fund, which is what I do. Just invest in the Islamic index fund, and it's just dead easy. Just invest in one of those. And yeah, and I'll talk a bit more about how to do that as well, because the hardest thing about halal investing is just getting started, just get the first £100 or $100 invested. But once that is done, I found it made things so much easier. Just things made a bit more sense, and it just kind of felt a bit more real and felt more doable. And that's the thing that I've found the most beneficial, just investing my first £100. Okay, everyone, thanks for tuning in, and please leave a comment below, a like, and subscribe, and let me know if there's anything else you want to talk about. And I'm also very keen to have guests on this show soon as well. So yeah, speak to you later. Assalamu alaikum.